10 to 3. Sometimes I get messages from people who've listened to the show and something that has happened on the show has resonated with them. Well, just a couple of days ago, David Keogh, who's in Chesham in Buckinghamshire, tweeted me, and I felt that it was worth getting David on to talk about why he tweeted me and the effects of just listening to a very small part of this show had on him. David, good afternoon.
Hi, Nihal. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to have you on the show, David. It's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
So you were listening to the show. We don't need to go into details of the particular show, but something someone said on the show resonated with you. Can you explain where you were and that feeling, if you can remember?
It's funny how radio has the power to do this sometimes. It's how music sometimes makes you feel a certain emotion or feeling, and I know you know that. This hit me like a train. I was just listening to one of your shows. I don't think it was a specific article on ADHD, but you had someone on who was talking about how they were diagnosed late in life, and they were talking about their childhood and how they had been kind of treated as a child, excluded, made to feel like they were a bit thick and stupid, and they got diagnosed as an adult. They'd got over most of their problems, but they'd been diagnosed, and it enabled them to look back at their life and view themselves in a very different way. And when I heard this person speaking, I was in the middle of a field next to a bunch of cows, walking my dog. And I remember just staring at these cows, and tears were streaming down my face. And I just remember thinking, this is me. This person's talking about me. And everything this person was saying about themselves just resonated. And it was a very, I don't know if you want to call it a road to Damascus moment, but it felt like lots of things in my life before I'd got to that point that suddenly made some sense. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, David, were there questions that you had, or was it more about the way people reacted to the way you behaved?
No, well, it's a mixture of everything. Like if I look back through my life, I struggled really badly at school. I struggled with imposter syndrome throughout my entire adult life. I always thought I wasn't good enough for the things I was doing. And I've always got this bizarre need to try and prove to everyone that I am good enough. And it's destructive at times. It doesn't help. It doesn't help me get to where I'm going in a clean way. And you look back at the road of how I get from A to B sometimes, and there's all sorts of stuff spilt all over it when I look back, because of the way that I have to get from A to B is so much more difficult for me. My brain has never functioned properly. I can't recall information. I struggle with facts. I can't have arguments with people properly because I can't remember anything to back up my arguments. So I've always felt like my brain doesn't work right. And listening to this person speak, he was describing how my brain works. It was just a very weirdly difficult thing to hear, but it was also, in a strange way, just this massive wash of relief. Of course, I didn't actually know I had ADHD then. It took a year to get diagnosed. I was actually diagnosed 2 weeks ago.
Amazing.
I think that it's the power of radio, Nihal, and some of the things you have on your show. I mean, you deal with often with some pretty sensitive and difficult subjects, and I admire you for the way that you keep yourself together sometimes.
I barely do sometimes, to be fair, David. Let's not kid ourselves. There's no robot here, mate. I fall apart quite often, to be honest. Maybe after the show more than on the show. But okay. So it took a year. So after you heard this person describing who you were, what did you do then?
Well, I mean, when I gathered myself, which took me a good 20 minutes, I couldn't really move for 20 minutes. I had to try and process what I'd heard. And anyway, I finally got my dog home, and I went straight on to my doctors and phoned them and asked to speak to them. And I managed to get an appointment. And they sent me, which is really funny, from an AD ADHD clinic, they sent me a 100-page document and it didn't work properly. Like, it asked me to put all my details in and it wasn't working. And I was screaming, I was punching my laptop. So why isn't this working? I mean, to send me a document that's unusable when I've got ADHD is like throwing a grenade into a petrol tank. And that process alone exposed my ADHD. Oh dear. But, I belligerently bludgeoned my way through the form and sent it off, more out of spite by the end of it than anything else. And then I had to go and see her through a few different people who asked me more detailed information about my childhood, relationships, the sort of way my brain works. And the doctor diagnosed me and said it was one of the most blatant cases of ADHD he'd seen. And he knew straight away, he's like, as soon as he spoke to me, he knew I had it.
So what, since your diagnosis, has that meant for you? Oh,
Nihal, I can't begin to tell you. I look back at every time I was told I was stupid or I was useless or I was made to feel worthless or I was at school, they would put all the thick kids, as they called them, all in the same class when I was a kid. So you ended up at the bottom of every subject with all these other, what they labelled as thick kids. And of course, I look back now and I think all those kids just had learning difficulties of various shapes and forms that were never identified, never looked out for. But it helps, and it also helps me with my son. My youngest son, who's 11, is showing some similar traits to me. And I don't know if it's genetic or not. I was actually born 9 weeks early, which is one of the main things that probably caused my brain to function differently. I think with premature kids, often you get a lack of oxygen to the brain, and it can cause learning difficulties in adult life. But my youngest son is displaying very similar things, and not as extreme, perhaps. But the teachers around him, the schools now, they know. They're there. They don't even see it as an issue. They just manage everything around him. He doesn't even need to be labelled or to go and find out about it. But for me, it means I can manage him and help him better. But more importantly, I can actually look back at my life and look at it through a different lens, where I wasn't stupid, where I was struggling, where I could have been helped but wasn't. And it makes it easier, I think.
Yeah,
to cope with, I mean, it's not going to make any difference to me at 47 now. I've learned ways to survive with this and cope with it.
Yeah, but it's understanding that it's not something to be looked down upon, or that you understand who you are and understand who you are. This is purely by coincidence, but Dan Maudsley is about to do the news in about 3 minutes' time, and Dan and David, you have perhaps something in common.
I'm 7 years further along the journey than you, David, and I'm sat here listening to you, just nodding away, because so much of it resonates with me. Not actually the childhood bit. Luckily for me, school, the kind of structure of school, really worked for me. It was later in life, after university, and then when I had kids, when all the wheels came off, because there was no structure there at all. And 7 years after diagnosis, I mean, you said then, I don't know if it'll change much. Honestly, for me, mate, it's changed the world, And that initial thing that you're going through, that initial, sudden
2 weeks ago for Dave.
Yeah, that sudden flip of understanding where, everything you thought...
It's like someone has literally flipped a switch, isn't it?
It's like a huge leap, but then you will reap the rewards of that over the years as you work things out, as you get better coping mechanisms than the ones you've inadvertently just put in place because you didn't know what was going on.
Well, I don't know about you, but I also think it's a bit of a superpower, because it gives us some ridiculous level of focus. When we are focused, we're unstoppable. Yeah. The problem is when
it's a really rubbish one that you can't control very well. But honestly,
wait a minute, Dan, I think you're being a bit modest here, because when it comes to doing award-winning podcasts, it kind of very much helped you where focus was needed.
Yeah, all came after my diagnosis. I would not, to explain, I did a big podcast called Paradise, which was a big investigation. It took me a couple of years, huge organisation, all sorts of stuff. I would never have been able to do that before I was diagnosed.
It really helps. It really can be a superpower for anyone out there who thinks that they've got it or their children have got it. I think understanding that it's there and it can be put to use, and it's not actually a disability as such. It's just a different way of your brain functioning. It can be really positive. So, yeah, I'm hoping that people listening to this will get the same effect that I had when I listened to it originally, Nihal, and they'll go and if they feel that there's something wrong with them, they'll go and get it checked out, because who knows?
Well, David, thank you so much, firstly, for tweeting me that this was the case. And I'm just so happy that someone on this show managed to open that up for you. Secondly,
and thank you.
Thank you for agreeing to come on the show to talk about it. And Dan Maudsley, thank you as well for coming in here and having this conversation.
Good luck, David.
David, best of luck, my friend. David Keogh.